We stop in class and saying that our parents are going to come pick us up. Didn't really explain why. But then my mom, she came pick me up. I got in the car and she turned back and said to me that everything's going to be okay. But when I looked at her face, I knew that something was terribly wrong. And it was horrible to learn about the lives that were lost that day later on. And I feel like, for those that are alive at that time at 9/11, you remember where you were for that day and the horrible tragedy that happened here in the US. And the airport security experience, it changed after that. And I had learned recently about some changes that I was unaware of. And I want to share that with you. And it does set the stage for a bigger question to ask yourself in your specific industry as a small business owner, or if you support small businesses, understanding in that industry um, how much involvement government has. It's important to ask yourself that. And then to ask yourself, where does it make sense for that involvement and where does it not make sense anymore to have that involvement? And I want to talk about security, airport security specifically. So, welcome back to the show. Excited to be able to connect with you here live again. For this is the week of testing this out, and it going to continue to do this moving forward. But just testing it out for the first week. Excited to be able to get your comments coming in, questions. Please continue to share this with friends and family, and continue to support this movement. It is a small and growing movement, and it is a determined movement. I've said it before. You can take that to the bank. And it gets me really excited because I believe that America's future is a small business renaissance and that it's made possible by free market capitalism because there has been assault on capitalism and there has been over for decades taking advantage of this system. And I really want to make sure that we are talking about this and having this conversation because I know how easy it can be for small business owners to get into their own into their own world and focus on just trying to get through the day without realizing what's going on a national level, on a bigger picture level. And I want to make sure that we are preserving this freedom that we have of deciding how we make a living, which includes owning your small business. And there's an assault on that freedom. I think about with Marxism and globalism. There is this assault that's happening and socialism too. There's that talk recently coming up. But where this leads where the roads lead to is the abolish of private property, which again is your ability to own your small business. And so, looking at this example of airport security, I want to set the stage of what happened pre 9/11, what the experience was like, and then share with you the changes that happened after 9/11. And then now looking at currently, does it still make sense for these changes? It's important as citizens to acknowledge where is government overreaching for its power, and then where as citizens can we voice concern and be able to talk to our elected officials and make changes. And as a small business owner and as a supporter of small business, you have a powerful voice to be able to communicate that. And I know at times when you don't see changes that are happening, especially in the business, I think about that for the results. When you aren't seeing that over time, you can feel hopeless. And that's where, for a lot of Americans, they get out of the game of being a small business owner or they change the business. And so I know how it can feel hopeless, especially with such big problems. But as I said, this group is a determined group for this movement that is continuing to grow. So let me get into what I found for pre 9/11. I did not know what the experience was really like. I could not remember flying before 9/11. I remember having a conversation with my mom about this for the experience and then diving into it more for the research. But specifically, I want to focus on the private security companies. They were the ones running security for the airport, and they were paid by airlines. And then you, as a citizen, you could, you know, as some examples here, you could you could walk your in-laws all the way up to the gate and say goodbye there without having to buy a ticket. And then you could get to the airport, around 30 minutes before your flight and still make it. So you didn't have to wait in hours in line. And then you could go on a date to one of the restaurants at the local airport without a ticket. That was something I'd seen like a picture where there was like white linen cloth on this table. And I think back to like, okay, to be able to go there, have dinner, then see airplanes taking off. Uh, that's a cool experience to be able to do that without having to buy a ticket. And you could just spend time there and support the local restaurant there. But then after the horrible and tragic events of 9/11, changes were made. And so this is where I want you to remember this. I'm going to get to this a little bit later, but remember the TSA Screening Partnership Program. So this was established as a pilot program with the Aviation and Transportation Security Act. But I'm going to get to that a little bit later. But TSA, the Transportation Security Administration, that was established in November of 2021 under the Bush administration. And it was, as I keep highlighting this, and it's important here, where something doesn't make sense, be curious and ask questions. So for me, I wanted to understand, okay, more about how how is it just all of a sudden uh, it changed from the private security companies to then government running the security through the TSA, and just the timelines there. It didn't make sense there for how fast that timeline was. It wasn't like, well, let's ask questions, let's figure out how to improve security or security standards. For me, that was a moment to be curious and ask questions. But then diving deeper into it, I looked at, okay, I found out about this TSA Screening Partnership Program, and I didn't know about this uh, going into it, that there was a pilot program, but it then became established fully, from what I could find, in 2004 is when that came up. I don't know why that year was. I was struggling with that year of being able to share that with you. But yeah, 2004 is when this was fully established. What this program does, to do an overview of it, and there's a website you can check out for it to learn more, but it shows that there are private security companies currently today that are providing security for airports that then follow the TSA guidelines. And there are these contracts that get sent out that companies can take on. And there's certain list of companies on the website. And what I could find was some of them were from what I could find with the help of Gronk, that some of them are small businesses. And then for the number of airports involved, there is currently, as of last time I checked, 20 airports that are in this screening partnership program, where the airport is using private security companies to provide services for people that are flying, and uh, or security services for the people that are flying. So that I was just like, wait a second, like this is not, it's not adding up here. So, or it's just not making sense. Like this is where you got to ask more questions. Like, okay, wait, there's now this program, so private security companies are able to provide security services for airports. So does it still make sense then to have TSA agents in all these, like, all these airports? There's over 40 or over 400 airports here in the US. So that's something to think about, because I want to bring it back to well, I have a few things I want to talk about with this. So I want to talk about the security difference, because that might be something that comes up of like, okay, well, which one is better for security purposes? Because if the change happened, there must have been a reason why, that for that change to be able to increase security. And you'll find out, shocking to me when I saw that it was the security level. There is a lot of things that need to change. I think about it for security. So when I saw this number, the latest number, like changes have to be made for standards, because this was a report that came out. This was back 2017, and what was found out was that TSA failed in the ballpark of 80% of undercover tests by the Department of Homeland Security. So I'm going to repeat that: 80% around in ballpark. Okay, ballpark for the source. failed. And this was covered by ABC News. You can check it out. The article's out there for 2017. I haven't found anything recent since then, but that was shocking to see that and learn about that. I did not know that. So then I'm like, okay, well, does it make sense to that private companies could come in, private citizens, for the ownership of those companies and be able to have more of a share of the market in that way with a 400 over 400 airports, because right now currently there's 20 airports and it's grown over the years. Start off with 5 in the pilot program and then it's expanded from there. And some airports that are on the list is San Francisco International Airport and Kansas City International Airport. And what I dove into, looking at, okay, well, what's a comparison? What can I find? Because there's not, it's hard to dig into. I mean, transparency. There's not a lot of transparency here for like for the data that I could find. So similar to this one, it came from a source for the 80%. It was an unclassified document of saying, hey, 80% failure rate. Or in the ballpark. So what I could find, let me get to it here. Yeah, so there was a report, and this is a public affairs guidance document. You can look this up, from the TSA. That it was a report, or it was it was a guidance document. I don't want to say it was a report because it was a public affairs guidance document that showed that the performance of TSA agents and private contractors are comparable. That was stated in this document. So if it's comparable, that's not making sense to me then, right? And if you're having that weird gut feeling, it's like, well, this doesn't make sense. Like if it's comparable for security, then what's the point then of having these TSA agents? And I'm asking the same thing because what I could find was there was, and there's no hard data on this, but what I could find was through what people were saying was there was like cost savings for going private contractor rather than TSA. The experience was better for customer service that was coming up. But again, there's no, I mean, this is what I'm finding. It's like through Gronk. It's not like hard comparison data points. The only thing that I could find, and please, if you have other information out there, please let me know. But what I could find was that there was in a public affairs guidance document that I just talked about, there was put in there that it showed that the performance of TSA agents and private contractors are comparable. This got to be talked about more. It has to be talked about more because this is another opportunity for small businesses to get involved and to be able to support the citizens that are traveling in this country or coming from other countries, being able for an opportunity for private citizens to come in and be able to have their security companies, provide the service. So this is something I'm going to take some more time to explore and be able to dive into the industry. It was interesting to get into how the different fees work. If that's fees for us flying, there's a certain fee that airlines pay. If that's for landing, so there's different. It's understanding who are the players right now. What are the different fees involved here, and get a better picture of what's going on. Because I think for the TSA budget, it's over $11 billion. And if it's not very effective and comparable to private contractors and private security, then that 11 billion could potentially be, or a lot of that budget could be used elsewhere. And I think about that, that's, your tax-paying dollars can be used elsewhere. So that was really interesting for me to dive into and understand more about. I want to create more space to get into this because it's important, as I said before, for us to understand where is there, overregulation. I think about that for lessening competition, and where could regulation that doesn't make any sense, get rid of that in your industry so that more competition can happen. That can then spur more opportunities for Americans to start small businesses and get involved. It creates a lower barrier to entry to get in there. and then being able to create more opportunities to be able to serve our communities. And with this, with airport security, I mean, what I think about is there a possibility for local companies in cities and towns, local security companies, to be able to support the airports in the area, and then try to figure out ways to localize for the standards. If that's because, again, with cities and states, those are primary owners of these airports, and so being able to figure out what is the federal standard, and then being able to continue to create more opportunities for private companies to get involved in security, and then going back to even having people come through security to be able to go and experience these restaurants. That was another thing that came up was, if you're going through security, could it be possible to go back to the ways before 9/11, where you don't have to have a ticket to be able to go through security and you can eat the restaurants, be able to walk your in-laws all the way to the gate, because you're still going through these checkpoints. Like, that was something else that came up for me of, well, if you're already going through the security, you're already getting checked, then couldn't you just go without a ticket and be able to have that experience of walking your in-laws, or being able for your family to meet you at the gate? So that's something else that is coming up more that I get curious about. But what I want to talk about is, again, on the national level, like, how does this then relate to, let's say you're in a different industry? How does this relate to your industry? Well, it's asking the questions, being curious and asking the questions where things don't make sense of government involvement. Like, where is government getting too involved? And that goes back to what I said of this America's future is a small business renaissance made possible by free market capitalism. Where can there be opportunities to limit government intervention and be able to support more private citizens being able to own small businesses, and being able to have more competition in these different industries across the I don't know, actually, I gotta figure out the number for how many industries there are, but for all these different industries here in the U.S. Because, as I said before, there are evil forces that are putting a lot of pressure on this freedom that we have of deciding how we make a living through capitalism. And I remember having this conversation with a small business owner, and how he said that capitalism is greed. It's greed. But then, so for me, I was like, well, no, it's the people. Like, there can be people that take advantage of the system. There can be people that are very greedy. And that's where it's important to have small business owners that care about the community, care about supporting their teams, supporting the people that they are serving through their products and services. Like, that's also really important to elevate that and have good, decent small business owners. But it's the system is what provides then the freedom to decide how you make a living. And so when it comes to socialism or communism, and I think about them as like an appetizer to the main meal, where the roads lead is to the abolish of private property. And I want to really be clear with that. And that's where socialism is government control over the means of production. And historically, how it's been implemented is government enforcing this. And so then it becomes this oligarchy at the top. And it's really important for us to preserve these freedoms that we have on an individual level. I was um, programmed uh, to think about the collective over the individual, think that that was a good idea. But we can't lose the individual freedoms that we have. We can't in our Western civilization. Something we must preserve, and we must fight for our republic in this way. And the way that we can do that is by making sure. I think actually, this is something I want to correct from last night's show, because I remember saying this, where you feel a lot less stress, or a lot less stress in your life when you're making a profit to reinvest in your business. You and your family are happy, the team is happy, and the people you are supporting with your products and services are happy. And then the problems you have, they feel easier to deal with. Well, as a small business owner, you know that it's hard to get all of those together and everyone's happy. There's always some problem that's coming up. But what to think about here is, who has more problems? I think about Hunger Games with, like, may the odds ever be in your favor. does the small business owner or the small business have less problems than a big business? Let's say if you have more than 100 employees, more than $10 million in revenue, are you going to be? Do you have are the odds in your favor that you're going to have less problems, or are you going to have more problems than if you had less than that, less than 100 employees, less than $10 million in revenue? So that's where I believe America's future is a small business renaissance, because you can then have less problems that you're dealing with, because it becomes a numbers game. With more, there's more opportunities for more problems to happen, more challenges that you got to deal with, more people that are trying to communicate to you, and then even through the delegation process. I mean, there's still bigger problems that can come up, and it's for me, it's just that's where again it's being curious and asking questions and figuring out, okay, does this really make sense to just continue to grow and continue to add in more income, more revenue? Like, does that make sense, or do I want to have more impact? And then if I want to have both, like what is my level? Because I've talked about that before, is making sure you know your number. What is your number to make sure that your basic needs are met? And from there, once those are met, then you don't have to compromise. Like I in general, don't compromise your moral values. But especially when that number gets hit, and then everything else on top of that is just an added benefit. It's like great. It's something to be grateful for. And from there, it's not a place where you have to compromise. If it's compromising who you're working with, that just isn't a right fit. Compromising your values, you can hold firm in that, because you remember your number. You're not getting caught up in the hedonic treadmill of just getting more and more and more and more, going on to the next thing and the next thing and the next thing, and continuing to build bigger and bigger and bigger. So that is something I'm going to continue to talk about as a theme this week. And this one is not going to be the last time I'm going to talk about this, for where there's an opportunity here for this industry for private security at airports to continue to grow and expand. I think there's an opportunity here, an opportunity to talk more about being able to go past security once you go through security. And if you don't have a ticket, being able to go and experience the restaurants, being able to walk your in-laws to the gate. That is a conversation I believe needs to be, we've got to continue to talk about that more on this show. But as always, I appreciate you in the support of this movement, and excited to be able, as I said at the beginning of this, to learn more about your questions, your insights, especially if to learn what you resonated with from tonight's show, and where you're going to potentially explore more relating to this. I'm in to learn more about your insights, and read the comments that you're sharing. So I really do appreciate you. Excited to reconnect again soon, and excited to be able to continue to witness and be part of this movement that is growing. As I said, it is a determined movement. It is small and growing, and you're making this possible. So good night.